My own spiritual journey, if I can call it that, was pretty much a lifelong thing. Let me summarize it, and then we'll get into what I'm going to talk about. So, the starting point, you could say, was when I was 17, which was when I became a Christian. I had leanings towards that prior to that age, but that was when I made a firm commitment. And then we had like about 2 decades of struggling with that, where I couldn't get it to make proper sense to me, and I flitted back and forth between atheism and Christianity. And when I finally got that sorted in my mid-30s, the thing that clarified it for me was recognizing that it wasn't 2 alternatives, it wasn't 2 choices. You know, Christianity with an authoritarian textbook, or a priestly class if you're a Catholic, all the trappings of organized religion, all the control of your life that it takes, all of the trust that you have to put in and you're wondering whether it's misplaced trust, all of this sort of toxicity that builds up in your life as a result of following rules that are not in keeping with your nature. So then you have atheism, the flip side of that, which tends to go with a completely naturalistic appreciation of the universe, which robs everything of meaning, right? It's just a big machine turning over. Nothing's for anything. Nothing's behind anything. Nothing underpins anything. Just a universe of senseless matter churning around and around. Pretty depressing. So that's not where it stopped for me. I got in touch with this, accidentally really, this philosophical outlook that tends to go by the name Non-duality, right? And it made a great deal of sense to me, and I ran with it. And it's the idea that there is a spiritual dimension to life, but it's very abstract. We don't really get to know what it is, but there's a oneness underpinning the multiplicity of the universe that we see. It all comes from a kind of cosmic oneness. So you are that oneness, and everything is that oneness. Nothing's divided from anything, except in the sense of this being a sort of matrix-like experience, you know? It's kind of like that. I'm not really doing the whole philosophy justice just by talking about it in those terms, but oneness is the essence of everything, unity. So it's an abstract spirituality. It doesn't do away with God, except you can't understand God as an overlord. God underpins everything. God doesn't rule over everything. God is the cosmic mystery at the root of your identity, at the root of everything. So, meaning still exists in my life, in the sense that I have an implicit trust that there's something behind all this. It's not the atheistic picture of just a billiard ball universe of things flying around senselessly for no reason. There's something behind all this. You don't get to know what it is, but there's an implicit trust that it's there. And that is the lot of every sentient being, right? Partial sightedness, partial knowledge, never getting the full picture. Let me look up something here, because there was a comment that came through on my YouTube channel that was very poignant by Running Bear. Hi, Running Bear. Hope you don't mind me reading this comment, but it's very, I thought you articulated your feelings very well here, and this is going to be very poignant to what I have to say. I honestly think humans are too stupid to truly understand the universe. Even our scientists with their super high IQs can't figure out what's going on. We know little things like the fact that the universe is expanding and that life evolved, but that's about it. It seems like everything else is just theories or nonsense. We don't even know if life is common in the universe. It's possible that we're the only intelligent animal in the entire universe, and that life is completely meaningless. I think people seriously need to think twice before having children, because it's a bunch of BS that we have to go through this life not knowing anything. It seriously drives me insane that humanity doesn't have any of the big answers. No intelligent animal should have to exist without answers. It's beyond screwed up. So, Running Bear here is in exactly the same predicament as me, as all of us, but I feel totally different about that predicament than he does. He reminds me very much, could be a she, okay? He reminds me very much of the way I felt when I drifted into those periods of atheism during my big 2-decade Christian phase. The meaninglessness of it hit me. The frustration at not being able to find answers was really intense at times. But I came to realize, and I think it really, this attitude I have now comes more from being confident that nobody out there has those big answers you're looking for, and that's the natural state, not knowing. So that ceases to be something I'm frustrated by, and instead you're basking in a kind of cosmic mystery. So I wish I knew exactly what to say to kind of tilt that understanding a little bit in Running Bear's case. But I guess you just need to get in touch with non-duality. That needs to be a felt reality. That you're not this little speck of dust all alone. You're the outworking of God, for want of a better word. Every creature is the eyes and ears of God. God put himself in this position to experience the sense of being distinct from everything. The great dream, if you like, of being human. So, the reason I brought that up is because I think that the current sort of spiritual malaise that is in the world comes largely from, there's a bit of guesswork here, okay? I haven't got this from any statistics that I've read or anything, but it's just a kind of feeling. Christianity and the big religions, they're all failing. People are seeing past it because they just don't provide an accurate view of reality, and we can see that more and more. The more in touch with science that we are, the more we see that something like Christianity just doesn't fit with reality. Cosmologically, anthropologically, it's just a bad fit. So what you're left with then is just facing the fact that, oh, there's no God. It must be atheism, it must be the mechanical universe, nothing's for anything, it's all meaningless. Ugh, how depressing. That's kind of the spiritual malaise, I think, that we're facing. And it makes me think very strongly that non-duality, which is an esoteric view, as in for the few people who dig deep and do the work, it has to go mainstream, or the human race may be in big trouble. Because I think people are looking for meaning, they're not finding it, and so they're kind of, take a look at all the whole social justice warrior thing and all the craziness there. I think people are attaching themselves to something that they hope will give themselves meaning, and it's a kind of a desperation thing. But I don't feel any of that. I feel completely at peace in my role as a human being, in the not knowing, basking in the wonderment, in the mystery of it all, feeling my mortality, knowing that it is mortal, feeling that the mind of Darrell Sloan does not go on after death, but knowing that I have the root of my identity is cosmic in nature, and not worrying that this just fades away, just like the body fades away. I'm very satisfied with that, but it's very hard to communicate that to a person who, for whom religion has failed, and who is facing this equally erroneous view from science, and science is great, don't get me wrong. this equally erroneous view that we just live in a mechanical universe that's senseless. And the way out of that malaise is non-duality. And I think a real stumbling block to this becoming mainstream is something that we might call the spiritual treadmill. And I see a lot of people who talk about non-duality fall into this, and it would be very easy for me to fall into it too if I were more successful or if I were less aware of what I'm about to tell you. Here's the problem with spirituality, whether it's non-dual spirituality or whatever. Somebody teaches it, it reaches a whole bunch of people, and then that teacher puts his own particular spin on it, and it becomes about that person. One example, Eckhart teachings, right? Eckhart Tolle I'm talking about. The spiritual personality who has the special message it's not non-duality, it's Eckhart's message, right? I think the same could probably be said of Deepak Chopra, right? And plenty of others. It's my message. And people have sort of looked at me in this same way, and they've said, Darryl this and Darryl that, and your message, Darryl. And they're sort of thinking, I don't really have a message. I just talk about non-duality, and I don't own it. It isn't mine. I haven't done anything original. I haven't said anything that you can't find someone else has said. I don't want to put my name to something and make it about me. And the problem with all these teachers that do this is that, well, there's a couple of problems with it. But first and foremost, I think it's a stumbling block to atheists because they're wise to the idea of the guru. They've been through religion, they've seen how toxic it is. The last thing they want is another religious message with a figurehead. Right? That's the last thing they want. So non-duality has to lose all of the religious trappings completely. I mean, can you ever imagine me sitting here in a robe talking to you, right? I mean, I'm sitting here in a Goonies t-shirt, for goodness sake, right? I've got Alien and Predator action figures on the shelf behind me. Just an ordinary person who likes silly things. And this, I guess, is why I was always attracted to Brad Warner as a teacher, because he loves his Godzilla movies and stuff like that. He's just an ordinary guy, and it was great actually to meet him once in Belfast. Brad, I wouldn't accuse Brad of doing this, but I think there's a danger that he could fall into it, because Brad has a whole bunch of books out, and Brad depends for his livelihood. I'm sorry to use Brad as an example because I really do respect the guy and like the guy, but his whole YouTube channel is all about Zen Buddhism, and non-duality is a part of Zen Buddhism. So he's talking about it over and over and over, and it's a new video every day or every couple of days, coupled with, requests for donations, and that's how he makes his living. And fair enough, he's a Zen Buddhist priest, but yeah, I mean, Brad's not a good example. I don't want to criticize Brad. I like Brad, but I don't want to emulate him. I really don't. Because, first of all, the religious trappings, I don't want any of the religious trappings. I think they're a bad idea for people in the West who've just had their fill of poisonous religion. And I think there's a danger that a spiritual teacher faces that you might call the spiritual treadmill. And it kind of goes like this. You start speaking about esoteric things, people start listening to you, and then the teacher experiences the need to keep those people perpetually as a student so that he can continue being the teacher. So the only way to do that then is to compromise, to essentially hold back everything so that you're not quite giving the whole game away, Because if you did, there'd be no more need for those people to cling to you. Now, I do give the game away. There's nothing I've held back on video or in print. And I've got one book out, Universe. Right? I don't think there will be another. Can't guarantee that, who knows, but I was thinking the other day that there might be another book, possibly, and I was thinking of the theme of it, because this is another thing that you know, I'm still in a kind of, this is hard to explain, I'm not articulating this very well, but whenever I found non-duality, it wasn't that I found the truth. There were all kinds of problems with non-duality teachings that I became aware of. And I think it was my experience with Christianity and being a critical thinker to overcome that allowed me to see the problems with non-duality teachings. And essentially, I've crystallized this in a sort of fun way by saying it's Buddha versus Satan, right? Or it's like Satan and Buddha have to get together and make friends somehow. And I'm speaking of that mythically. Having read the writings of Anton LaVey, there's a lot of value in that approach to life that he advocates, right? Which he calls Satanism, right? Mythically. Satan's just the mascot, essentially. There's no actual being called Satan. And then you have Buddhism, and by that I really mean non-duality. But so many teachers of non-duality are all about love. And I'm sorry, but life is adversarial. Life is satanic, right? Satan means adversary. And so I realized that the next sort of spiritual battle that I had to engage in post-Christianity was to try and integrate those two views of life into a philosophy that made sense. And that has been articulated in my book, Universe. I was tempted to call that book The Satanic Universe, which might have actually made it sell better because it has a more striking title, right? But it was about more than just that. There's basically a chapter in Universe called The Duality Dilemma, which goes into the sort of thing I'm talking about here, which is, I could summarize it as the paradox of adversity in an undivided universe. See what I mean? The universe is essentially undivided, a unity, a oneness, and yet there is conflict and adversity. Why? So to dig deep into that question. And then I came to realize that a lot of non-duality teachers just, this issue didn't even register with them. They were teaching non-duality and it was totally unrealistic. So I tried my best to address that. And I think part of the reason why people keep coming back to non-duality teachings again and again is because they're not working. And they're not working because they're not being taught right. And they're not being taught right because they're not being understood right by the teachers. Who am I to say that, right? You know, just little me down here with my tiny little following on YouTube. I just got to call it like I see it. I think probably 90% of non-duality teaching is useless. So, and this gets back to what I'm saying about the spiritual treadmill. This is something that should be teachable, and then the person takes it and they integrate it into their lives and they benefit from it and they walk away because it's done. The job is done. I honestly think I've got very little left to learn from any particular spiritual teacher. I think this is as good as it gets. And you will have noticed on my channel that over the past year or more, things have gone more in the direction of me just having fun, making music, talking about books I've read, movies that I've read, stuff like that. Because essentially, life is play. I've always said that, life is play. So when do I get to start being less serious and play, right? So it shouldn't be a treadmill. I don't want it to be a treadmill here. I don't like seeing it as a spiritual treadmill everywhere else. I think there should be a one-book thing that teaches non-duality, and that's it. You benefit from it, you walk away with it, the job is done. And anything that you learn later, you know, some nuanced things, that's fine. You can add that into your understanding, because it's a big thing to take on. It's a big thing to understand. I couldn't swallow it all in one sitting. It took me years to figure out the nuances of it. But when that's done, it's done. Nothing has really changed in my understanding for a long time. There was a guy, a channel called The Nematon, that really, I watched a video recently by him, who really articulated this well, this idea of the spiritual teacher who comes out with the esoteric message and then experiences the desire to keep people perpetually as a student. So then he has to hold back. And then the following grows and grows, but he's always holding back. And that's not fair. And it looks very suspect to anybody approaching non-duality with a normal, healthy, scientific, critical thinking perspective, right? So anyway, we covered a bit of ground there. It's all been a bit jumbled, but what the heck, we'll upload this as is. So essentially, spirituality mustn't be a treadmill. If it is, it should be temporary. There should be an end point to this where you get it, and then you essentially get on with your life. And you should be suspicious of people who keep you continually on that treadmill. And if all you're doing is reading non-duality books over, you know, again and again, the next non-duality book, the next non-duality book, what's wrong? Why are you doing that? What isn't working? Because you need to talk to somebody, whether it's me or somebody else, and work that out. But yeah, the spiritual malaise. How do we get non-duality to go mainstream? I do think it's the answer to most of the world's problems. I just don't know how we get there. It's been there for thousands of years, but it's never been mainstream. And I think today, with the internet age, is the one time that it actually maybe stands a chance of that actually happening. Okay folks, take care. The sky